Welcome, sleepless spirit. I'm your storyteller tonight, here to guide you gently into the shadows of slumber, where dreams take over and worries fade away. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more bedtime tales, whispered just for you. Let me know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from, and what time is it as you listen tonight? And if there's a story you've been longing to hear, something spooky, something comforting, tell me. I'm always listening. Now, tuck yourself in. Let the darkness wrap around you like a warm blanket. It's time to let go and drift into the story. Greetings, drowsy spirit. Tonight, I will tell you a story that will help you fall asleep soundly. Remember to subscribe for more bedtime stories and like the video before we start. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is in the comment section. I would also love to know what story you would want to hear next. Even though it seems like a lifetime ago today, I can still clearly recall my first year of college. I had just turned 18, and it was like entering another planet as I walked onto Riverside State University's campus. I didn't attend a posh prep school in Palo Alto or Boston. In the small town outside of Sacramento, where I grew up, getting accepted to a community college was considered a major accomplishment. Despite having a respectable GPA in high school, I never thought of myself as exceptional. I was surrounded by young people who introduced themselves by listing their research internships, AP courses, and professional aspirations as if they were already trying out for board positions. My mother used to make jokes about Nick back home, saying, "You're brilliant, but you're no workaholic. Trying to keep up with those kids will exhaust you before you even complete orientation." She was not mistaken. Nick Carter is my name, but no connection to the Backstreet Boys. That joke was always made. I thought I had landed on a different planet during my freshman year at Riverside State. Trevor, my roommate in the first week, was already discussing investment banking. He had spreadsheets for classes, clubs, and networking activities that were color-coded. In the meantime, I was merely attempting to figure out how to enter the dining hall by swiping without being foolish. I was quickly affected by the pressure. Self-branding appeared to be a major concern for everyone. LinkedIn was almost considered a religion. In the dorm, I recall staying up late, feeling like I was already behind before I had even begun. I sat in the common room looking over the polished profiles of my classmates, president of this, intern of that. One evening, when I was revising my LinkedIn summary, Trevor leaned over. "Bro, you need to list your expertise. Despite your lack of expertise, give the impression that you are an Excel whiz. Nobody looks." I chuckled uneasily. "That's lying, isn't it?" He gave a shrug. "It's advertising. If you don't market yourself, you'll fall behind." I thus took part in the game. I joined a business fraternity, added faux confidence to my profile, and shook hands as if my future relied on it. I was genuinely pleased with my progress by the spring semester. Although I wasn't as ambitious as Trevor, I reasoned that I would be okay if I managed to secure a respectable summer internship. The communication arrived at that moment. I noticed the warning on a Wednesday afternoon in March. My phone buzzed while I was in the library, half slumbering over my economics textbook. "Hi there, Nicholas. Your background intrigued me when I saw your profile. Motivated students like you are needed for an upcoming internship program at our company. I would love to schedule an interview if you are interested." I watched the screen and blinked. I had never received a bot mail like this before. The writing was detailed. Raymond Ellis Talent Acquisition, Stonebridge Consulting Group was the sender's signature. 3 times, I read it again. Stonebridge had a real voice. Financial consulting. It was precisely the glamorous internship that can help me stand out. Trevor's eyes brightened when I told him. "That's massive. Stonebridge, dude. You must respond." I scowled. "Do you know who they are?" He gave a head shake. "No, but that sounds rather big." My chest pounded with excitement as I chuckled. "Thanking Raymond for getting in touch," I answered. He replied within a day, requesting that I schedule an initial interview with one of their associates. Victor Hale was the name of that associate. I did what any child who is anxious would do. I looked him up on Google. Nothing. Not one, no headshot, no online traces, no LinkedIn profile. I also tested the name of the company, Stonebridge Consulting Group, though they were generic enough to make me question whether I was searching at the incorrect firm. A few ambiguous search results appeared. Nevertheless, the emails had a polished appearance. Everything felt authentic, including the formatting and tone. Perhaps he simply doesn't make much of himself, I told myself. The next Tuesday, Victor proposed that we meet at a coffee shop. He provided me with an address in Eastbrook, a city roughly 20 minutes from the university. My first warning sign was at Eastbrook. When I told Trevor, he inquired, "Why in the world would you be interviewed there by a large firm? They may visit the university with ease." I gave a shrug. Perhaps they have a base there. Bro, Eastbrook isn't about suit-wearing financial brothers. It's more about warehouses and car shops. He was right, but I was misled by the prospect of a real internship. I persuaded myself that the risk was worthwhile. I was a complete mess the morning before the interview. I paced the room, pressed my one and only button-down shirt 3 times, hallway of the dorm, and rehearsed responses in front of the mirror. Leaning against the doorway was Trevor. "I think you're overanalyzing things. Don't sound robotic, please. It's easy for you to say." He grinned. "I'll take you to your destination. In any case, I have to leave campus." I refrained from arguing. I'm glad I didn't. We arrived in Eastbrook at approximately 4:00 p.m. The area of town wasn't pleasant. There were cracks in the streets. Half of the shops were boarded up. As I looked up the location on my phone, Trevor slowed down the vehicle. He said, are you sure about this?" "Yeah, it's right here somewhere." He looked around as he parked at the curb. "I've never seen a coffee shop like this one." Up ahead, I saw what appeared to be a building site. My stomach grew constricted. I hurriedly said, "Walk the last block. I don't want my friend waiting outside when I arrive for an interview." Trevor's eyebrows went up. "However, do you want me to stay?" "No, it's all right." He smiled as he took a bag of cannabis out of the glove compartment. "I have time." I chuckled uneasily. "Make yourself comfortable." After adjusting my tie and getting out of the car, I headed for the address. Everything took a turn for the worst at that point. The structure had vanished. There was nothing but rubble, chain-link fencing, and a partially destroyed brick shell where the coffee shop should have been. I stopped, took out my phone, and verified the address again. The same as previously. I began to dial Trevor's number in confusion, but a booming voice called out to me from behind. "Nick." I turned around. Standing next to a matte black Mercedes was a man who was easily 6'6" and dressed in a fitted black suit. His eyes were as sharp as glass, and his smile was too big. "Victor Hale," he remarked with ease and held out his hand. Despite my damp palm, I shook it instinctively. "Well, it's good to meet you." I mistook the coffee place for where we were meeting. He looked at the debris and scowled. "Odd. It must have shut offline. Whatever. We should go somewhere else." "Join in." He indicated the Mercedes. "You have the shotgun." I nearly obeyed for a moment. The costly, immaculate automobile shone in the late afternoon sun. However, my curiosity prompted me to look into the back seats as I approached. My heart stopped at that moment. Half hidden by shadows, a man laid flat on the car's floor. He had a long, metallic object in his hand, a crowbar. He glanced up into my eyes. All of my instincts spoke out. I spun around and took off running. "Nick!" Victor's loud voice followed me. "Hold on." With a roar, the Mercedes engine came to life. Tires squealed. With my lungs burning, I ran down the cracked sidewalk. In the hopes that Trevor hadn't driven away, I scurried around the corner. With its headlights blazing, the car behind me swung onto the street. Underscore, with my legs pumping, I gasped. A rusty fire escape up ahead dangled over a side street. I grabbed the ladder and leapt without thinking. Even though my arms were shaking a lot, adrenaline kept me going. Below, the Mercedes skittered to a stop. The passenger door splintered open. Heart thumping, I clambered upward to the landing on the second level. I leaned on the wall and looked down. For what seemed like an eternity, The automobile sat motionless, then it gradually withdrew, vanishing around the bend, until Trevor's voice broke the silence. I remained motionless on the fire escape. "Where the devil are you, Nick?" I almost burst into tears of relief. I hurried to the street, scurried down, and wrenched open the door of his car. "What took place?" he demanded as I tumbled in gasping. "Drive," I croaked. "Just drive." We tore out of Eastbrook, neither of us speaking 4 miles. I never heard from Stonebridge Consulting Group again. No emails, no follow-ups. The account that messaged me disappeared completely. 4 years, I refused to talk about it. I buried it deep, believing myself it had been some odd misunderstanding. But late at night, when I close my eyes, I still see that crowbar glinting in the shadows. How many other pupils received the same message, I wonder? How many failed to make it? I had no idea how college would begin. I used to dream about moving into a dorm in high school, carrying boxes up concrete stairs, laughing with my parents, maybe meeting my roommate, and falling in love right away like in a corny college movie. For the first several weeks, I expected to be homesick or anxious about school, but I didn't anticipate being afraid. Not in this manner. The only major events in Santa Rosa, California, where I grew up, were wine festivals and the occasional wildfire threat. My parents were ordinary people. My mother was a nurse, and my father owned a repair shop. Despite my lack of social skills, I had a close-knit group of friends and performed well academically. My parents were ecstatic when I was accepted to Redwood State University, a mid-sized institution, just a few hours from home. After high school, I was the first person in my family to enroll in a 4-year institution. I have a clear memory of the drive up. My mother asked me repeatedly whether I was anxious. From the passenger seat, Mother turned to smile at me and whispered, "You'll make friends quick," while my dad continued to focus on the road. "Yeah," I replied. "I mean, at orientation, I already got to know one of the men. He seems cool," my dad said with a grimace. "Avoid getting into problems. Work hard in your studies. You are there for that reason." I gave an eye roll. "I know, Dad. I witnessed dozens of students moving in, parents embracing, children lugging lamps, and little refrigerators when we eventually pulled into the parking area outside my dorm building. I experienced the anxious thrill of beginning something significant. My housing assignment had informed me that I would be living in a Jack and Jill arrangement, which consists of essentially 2 rooms with a shared toilet. A total of 4 men. One of them, Trevor, who I had met at orientation, and his roommate, I already knew. The man who would actually be in my room with me was the one I didn't know. Mororo Julian was his name. A few weeks before to moving, I had actually messaged Julian on Instagram to introduce myself. His responses were brief and uninteresting. Nothing more than a few words. Me. "Are you prepared to move in, man?" Julian. "Yes." Me. "What genre do you enjoy?" Julian. "Not at all." Me. "Not at all." As in, at all. Julian. Doesn't truly satisfy the gap. I spent a lot of time staring at that final message. Fill the gap. How could that possibly imply anything? His profile was peculiar, as well. Almost no posts, largely sporadic, poor quality memes, and a couple of selfies in which he appeared washed out by the LED light. His bio simply stated that he was better online than in real life. I reasoned that he might simply be socially uncomfortable or introverted. I convinced myself it was no big thing. In any case, my roommate and I were never going to be best friends. But I was taken aback when I first saw him in person. Julian was about 5 feet 10 inches tall and had a slender frame. He appeared to have lived his entire life indoors, with pale, almost sickly complexion. It appeared as though he had been attempting to grow a mustache since middle school, and his hair was thin and unkempt. He was putting his PS5 on the desk and hardly looked up when I came in with my folks and a box. "Hey," I said as I put my belongings down. "I'm Nick," he said, giving me a quick glance. Julian he stammered a little and said softly. He immediately returned to plugging in cords after that. I made an effort to continue the small conversation. "So, you from around here?" "So, He whispered, "Calm down. It's where my cousin is from. Which major do you have?" "Not disclosed." He avoided looking at me. My mother, who is always the mediator, grinned at him. "Julian, it's good to meet you." Yes, I could already sense the awkwardness of this situation. Julian was more than simply a gamer. Everyone played the game. He gamed that way. I was going through my phone in bed the first night after my parents left when Julian turned on his PS5 headset. He leaned forward, unlocked in, controller in hand. I anticipated some yelling and the typical trash talk. What I heard instead was strange. Every time Julian moved the controller, he let out these weird, guttural noises, like he was being shocked. His entire body jolted, shaking wildly for a moment before becoming motionless once more. Occasionally, he would whisper to himself and then, with a spooky giggle, repeat the same thing repeatedly. "I got it. You understand." "One night," he said, his voice low, followed by a suppressed laugh, I tightened my blanket, like some strange contortionist. He also had a habit of pushing his bare feet into the cabinet beneath his desk and dragging them toward his chest. To be honest, I thought he was having a seizure when I first saw it. I said nonchalantly, "Hey, what game are you playing?" After a few nights of this, he hesitated. "Doesn't matter." I chuckled uncomfortably. "I was just wondering, dude." You dive right in. Slowly turning his head, he gazed at me for a few moments before declaring, "This is the only place I feel alive." He returned to the game after that. To that, I was at a loss for words. I went out late with some of the dorm kids after about a week. The room was dark when I returned at around 1 in the morning. Julian appeared to be dozing off in his bed. As I opened my cupboard to get some items, I attempted to keep quiet, but then I felt like my skin was prickling. I pivoted. Julian was looking directly at me and was completely awake. His lips were curled into a little smile. I said, "Holy underscore dude. What the underscore? Why are you looking at me like that?" He laughed. Dark period. Then he turned to the wall and rolled over. I had a racing heart. I kept thinking about his lovely face in the dark. Over the following month, it occurred 3 more times. He would simply be staring at me, always wearing that tiny smile, and mumbling something I couldn't hear when I woke up or returned late. I asked to move when I went to housing. I was informed that everything was full. I requested permission to enter Trevor's room. He didn't want to move with his roommate. I was unable to move. After 3 months, I returned one day from my English class. Julian sprung to his feet as if I had caught him in the act of opening the door. His voice was worried as he said, "Why are you back so early?" I scowled. "Class ended late, I guess. What are you discussing?" Before striking this exaggerated position, reminiscent of an anime, he froze. "Don't stress over it." I winced. "All right." I saw the box on his desk at that point. Simple cardboard that has been taped up. "What is that?" I inquired. "Quickly," he responded. "Not important." I shrugged, but I couldn't help but notice that my scissors and phone charger were gone. I questioned him. He gave the scissors to me. Then the wire knocked the box off his desk. He handed me the charger. It leaked. Open. I felt sick to my stomach. My name was scrawled on a sticky note that was inside. It was accompanied by my socks, a disposable photo of myself that I had taken for fun and placed on my desk, a pair of unfamiliar-looking spectacles, and, worst of all, a few eyelashes that were sealed in a tiny transparent container. I went cold. "Julian, what the underscore is this?" He scurried and grabbed the items. It isn't what you believe. Not what I believe. You placed my underscore in a box that you had labeled with my name. Are you serious? I can clarify. No, leave. I was trembling. Remove the underscore from the space. He didn't argue for once. He simply walked away. I told my raw everything by text. Although he claimed to be off campus, he instructed me to preserve the box and provide it to him the next day, so they would have documentation to expel Julian. With my heart pounding, I shoved the package into my laundry bin, but Julian returned an hour later. He gave me a quick glance before stealthily moving to his side of the room. I remained silent. He didn't either. Fearing he would try to seize the box, I struggled to stay awake, but fatigue prevailed. Julian was gone when I awoke. I hurried over to my laundry basket. The package was gone. I went into a panic. Later, my roar arrived, but without the box. It was just Julian's word against mine. He claimed there was nothing he could do. That night, when Julian returned, I made a demand. The box is where? He cocked his head. Which box? I have no idea what you're discussing. I was ill. We are now in the second semester. I still share a room with him. Yes. Julian said to me one evening, I will never do it again. You can leave right away if I do. I'll notify you. I didn't answer. I have no faith in him. I leave the room as much as possible. I don't get much sleep. Every time I close my eyes when I'm in there, I see the sticky note with my name on it. The socks, the picture, the eyelashes, and the spectacles come to mind. Those belong to whom? He kept them. But why? What did he intend to do? And why did he write my name in that box out of all the others? I'm not sure if I'll survive this semester. However, I am aware of one thing. My perspective on online roommate horror stories will never be the same. Because mine is more than a tale, it continues to occur. Because mine is more than a tale, it continues to occur. Years after graduation, I never imagined that my freshman year would come back to bother me. I grew up in Cedar Falls, Iowa, a small Midwestern town where rumors were common and everyone knew each other's last names. My mom worked as a middle school secretary, and my dad owned a tiny car repair shop on the outskirts of town. Money was always tight, but we weren't impoverished. My golden ticket to leaving a tiny village and discovering my identity was college. I felt like I had won the lotto when I was accepted to Northview University, which is around 4 hours away. Despite not being Ivy League, the institution had a great academic reputation, a vibrant football culture, and a campus that resembled one from a college brochure, complete with lush courtyards, red brick buildings, and continuous lines of students strolling while sipping iced coffee. The day of moving was chaotic. Every roadway close to the dorms was congested with cars. While anxious freshmen gathered around in awkward silence, parents dragged boxes and tiny fridges up the walkways. My parents assisted me in moving everything to the building I was given. Eastbrook Hall was a tall, old dorm with a little odor of stale pizza and bleach. I was informed that I was in a Jack and Jill's room. It's set up with 2 other guys in the connecting room, one roommate in my direct bedroom, and a shared bathroom. I didn't mind. More people, I reasoned, meant more opportunities for friendship. That is, until I got to know my real roommate. Owen Caldwell was his name. I discovered his Instagram profile and texted him before to moving in. The account was peculiar. It largely contained memes, screenshots of Discord conversations and anime clips. There is not a single photo of him with family or friends. He responded to my messages with brief responses. Me. Hey, dude. It appears that this year we will be sharing a room. I'm thrilled. Owen. Cheers. Cool. Me. Which major do you have? Owen. I'm not sure yet. Me. Do you enjoy sports or music? Owen. No. That was all that was said. Awkward and dry. I thought he was simply shy. However, there was something about him that immediately made me uneasy when I eventually got to meet him in person. He had oily brown hair that seemed like it hadn't been washed in days, pale, thin, and hollow-looking cheekbones. There sat a thin mustache, uneven and spotty over his lip. He slouched downward, as if he were attempting to blend in with himself. Hello, I'm Caleb, I said, extending my hand. After he paused, he shook my hand feebly. Owen, he whispered in a quiet, nearly unsteady voice. I made an effort to brighten the tone. A big day, eh? Campus is insane. He nodded slightly. There are too many people. That was it. I made Owen feel like an introvert for the first several evenings. You do realize that not everyone comes out of their shell at once. However, the more I watched, the more I understood that he was not merely introverted. Rather, he was off. He played his PS5 4 hours at his desk without a headphone while grumbling to himself. Occasionally, he would mutter something and then recite it in an odd, giddy voice, as if he were echoing himself. When he smashed the controller, his body trembled fiercely, and occasionally, while still playing, he would bring his knees up to his chest and rock back and forth. His presence was worse at night. He would make these low groans, and then suddenly burst out laughing, which made my skin crawl while I was trying to go asleep. "Hey man, what kind of music do you listen to?" I asked casually one evening. He continued to stare at his screen. "I'm not a music lover. The void is not filled by it." I laughed uneasily, thinking it was a joke, but his expression was icy serious. A week later, the first really unsettling episode occurred. The room was dark when I returned at around 1 a.m., though going out late with some guys from down the hall. Owen was probably asleep. I was searching through my cabinet when I got a really cold chill, like if I were being watched. I pivoted. Owen was completely awake in his bed, his lips twisted into the tiniest smile, as he stared at me with his head pushed up just enough, smile, yelling, "Jesus, dude, why are you staring at me like that?" "Dark time," he muttered, laughing softly, and then rolled over to face the wall. That night, I didn't get much sleep, nor was it the last time. In the weeks that followed, I noticed him looking at me in the dark 3 more times, with the same slight smile every time. I studied at the library, hung out in different dorms, and even crashed at Riley's side of the suite when I could in October, trying my best to stay away from him. However, I saw Owen sitting at his desk with a little cardboard box in front of him one day, though I got home from English class. He gave a start when I entered, as if I had caught him in the act. "What's causing your early return?" His voice was tremulous as he inquired. I said, "My class ended late," incoherently. "This is my normal time," he stutteringly remarked. "You don't need to worry about anything," before striking an odd, exaggerated anime gesture. The embarrassment made me grimace, and I saw the box once more. I said, "What's that?" "It's not important," he said. I dismissed it, but when I sat down, I noticed that my iPhone charger was gone, as well as my scissors. "Hello, have you seen my belongings?" I inquired. After a moment of hesitation, Owen took the scissors out of his drawer and gave them to me. He handed me my charger, but the box was overturned when the cable caught on it. It sprang open. I felt sick to my stomach. My name was scrawled above a transparent plastic container that included a disposable photo of me that I had shot weeks ago as a joke, together with a pair of socks, my missing spectacles, and what appeared to be eyelashes neatly tied to an index card. I went cold. "What on earth is this?" I yelled. Owen scurried to get the things. "It's not how it appears. Not what it appears to be. You're taking my belongings, including my socks and photo." Panic broke my voice. He stumbled. "Just try not to panic out, please. Get out," I shouted. "Leave this place immediately." He snatched up the package and ran. I sent my raw a text right away. In order for housing to take action, he instructed me to present the box as proof the following day. With my heart pounding, I shoved it in my washing bin that evening. However, the box was gone when I awoke the following morning. When the raw arrived, I went over everything with him. He nodded and listened, but he moaned when I informed him that the box was gone. "There's not much I can do without it," he said. "His word is against yours." My stomach dropped. Owen came back later that day, my voice trembling. I faced him. "Owen, where's the box?" He gave an innocent blink. "Which box? Don't act foolish. You understand what I mean." With a slight smile tugging at his lips, he cocked his head. "Man, you have strange dreams. Housing never moved me, but I couldn't bear to be in the same room with him after that. I was unable to move. I believed it might be over by January." Owen was a recluse who didn't do anything overtly eerie. However, he still shook and mumbled during game sessions. "I won't do it again," he whispered quietly as he gazed at me one evening. "I'll let you know and move out if I ever feel like it." I was at a loss for words. Years later, I've graduated from college as a project manager in Chicago. I lead a life that ought to be typical, but sometimes I think of that box while I'm lying in bed. The eyelashes, the socks, the picture, and the spectacles. He gathered them for what reason? Why put my name on it? I'll never know. However, it's not what I saw in the box that keeps me up at night. It is what may have been absent that keeps me up at night. It is what may have been absent. I never imagined that my first semester away from home would be characterized by a harrowing night that still shivers me whenever I think about it, rather than by classes or new acquaintances. I wasn't even certain that I wanted to enroll in college with 2A after I finished from high school in 2010. I got accepted to a public institution 2 hours away from my hometown of Brookhaven, a seaside village. Despite my mother's insistence that I attend a community college, it had a reputation, but it wasn't Ivy League, half party school, half academic. My mother was concerned, but I assured her that I would keep my head down, concentrate on my business classes, and avoid being involved in the commotion. But to be honest, I was interested. I grew up in a peaceful suburban area where spending the weekends with friends meant driving around aimlessly or hanging out at the same diner. It was a different world at Brookhaven. House parties on every block, pubs that didn't even bother to check IDs, and streets crammed with students. Everyone in my immediate vicinity seemed to have been waiting their entire lives to get intoxicated and act recklessly. I moved in with Tyler and Jordan, two housemates I met online, in a tiny off-campus home. Both were natives who were previously acquainted with the town's landscape. Jordan, who was in my year, had the assurance of someone who had been there 4 years, and Tyler, a junior, worked part-time at a surf shop. They enjoyed sports, were humorous, laid back, and weren't awful guys. However, I swiftly discovered what they meant by a cold. During the night, 4 or 5 people would frequently collapse on our couch and drink cheap whiskey from half-empty bottles. It wasn't something I detested, even though I wasn't always aware of who they were. It was kind of comforting to feel like I was surrounded by people. However, I also had this feeling that persisted in the back of my mind. It wasn't safe in Brookhaven. It went beyond the occasional bar fight and drunk driving. It was the sense of loneliness in the environment. You stood out right away if you weren't a student. Additionally, some of the individuals who were not in school, who blended in with the darkness, and who were loitering on the outside of our neighborhood felt strange. One night, that uneasiness boiled over. On a Friday, I had attended a more subdued gathering with a couple of my classmates. Just a few beers and a lot of discussion about the impending midterms, nothing spectacular. At approximately 2:15 a.m., I took an Uber back to our home, with a faint street light that never seemed to function completely. The property was nestled between other student rentals on the outskirts of town. I entered and saw a figure lying out in the dark on the couch, not out of the ordinary. Most likely, Jordan or Tyler had allowed a buddy to crash there. I slid past without bothering to turn on a light, but for a moment, the manner the man was lying there stopped me cold. He was rigid, nor relaxed, nor fainted. Every muscle was tense and stiff. At his sides, his arms were pinned straight. His chest did not move with his breathing, if any. I walked more slowly. Then his head jerked in my direction, not the rest of his body, only his head. A glimmer of light from the window struck his wide open, glinting eyes. "Shit, I'm sorry." I tried to seem nonchalant as I muttered, "Didn't mean to wake you." He didn't say anything, didn't blink, just kept staring at me like he was waiting for me to do something. My stomach grew constricted. He might have been inebriated, perhaps intoxicated, perhaps both. I didn't enjoy his gaze on me, though. Hurrying inside my room, I locked the door behind me. The next thing I remember is waking up at about 4:30 a.m. to a gentle tapping at my door. So I must have fallen asleep for an hour. I initially assumed it was Jordan or Tyler, possibly intoxicated and in need of anything. However, the tapping became more rhythmic and rapid, resembling fingers beating on wood. With my heart racing, I sat up. Then there was a new noise, scratching slow at first, then furious, like nails pulling so forcefully that the wood gets splintered. The room was filled with a harsh, unrelenting loudness. I picked up my phone and sent Jordan a text. "Your pal is tripping or something, dude. Are you able to get him?" My door is being scratched by him. No response. I sent Tyler a text. This isn't humorous at all. Guy, your friend is making me nervous. Nothing. In the meantime, the scratching continued long after the fingernails should have bled or broken. The doorknob then began to jerk violently, repeatedly to the left and right. I gave Jordan a call. He gave a sleepy response. Hey, man, on the couch is your friend. He's going crazy at my door. Would you kindly take care of this? A pause occurred. Too much time. What friend? Now his voice was clear. The man. The one sitting on the sofa. Nobody was coming over tonight. I felt sick to my stomach. Lock your door, Jordan. I'm going to contact the police now. I ended the call. Suffice it to breathe. The scraping ceased. Quiet. Then the sound of fists hammering against Tyler and Jordan's door came from the other side of the hallway. Panicked, they screamed for him to stop. The door frame was shuddering beneath the strikes, and I could hear it. As the thumping persisted, I whispered to the dispatcher as I dialed 911. She claimed that officers were on their way, requested me to stay on the line, and remained composed. Abruptly, the pounding ceased. It was dead silent for a few seconds. When I peered down and seen fingers twitching beneath the 1-inch crack at the bottom of my door, I thought perhaps he had fled. Fingers, pale and trembling, scratching the floor. He growled in a deep, guttural voice. Animal sounds, not words, not drunken babble. With my back to the wall, I let out a yelp. Afterward, I chastised myself for not stepping on those fingers, but I was immobilized at the time. Sirens screamed outside a few minutes later. At the back of the house, I heard the sliding glass door bang open and then close, steps pounding into the darkness. Despite searching, the police were unable to locate him. They found scissors on the floor of the living room. The blades were worn and ragged. My door was deeply gouged. The wood has long scratches cut onto it. Looking back, I realized that neither the fingers nor the scratching was the worst part. It was the realization that earlier that evening I had passed him by. His slumber had been interrupted. He had been acting in an attempt to blend in and avoid attention. And he was successful, until he made the decision to come forward. He was never identified by the university. Although Brookhaven was populated by transients and drifters who blended into well with the student turmoil, the police promised to monitor the area. I still occasionally hear that scratching sound in my nightmares late at night, and I'll never forget how his eyes gleamed in the darkness, waiting, wide open. Darkness, waiting, wide open. I never imagined that at the age of 28, I would be teaching again. I used to chuckle a little at the concept. I was surrounded by enthusiastic, barely out of high school youngsters who were always talking about parties and weekend plans, their backpacks covered in stickers. However, life has a way of nudges you unexpected directions. I had spent my 20s working at dead-end jobs, barely making ends meet, and repeating myself over and over again, next year, I'll do something with my life. And now I found myself enrolled at a university I had always heard about, but at a regional campus. The one who was whispered about by everyone in town was known to be tough. Nevertheless, my small apartment was only a 20-minute drive away. I had come here for convenience, practicality, and perhaps a little stubbornness. The area wasn't the best. The occasional siren that broke the night like clockwork, graffiti on walls, stray animals wandering beneath cars, and faulty streetlights. All of it made me think of the kind of environment where people were taught to keep their heads down from a young age. Narratives of heroin users, meth labs, and in this area, prostitution wasn't unusual. However, I never experienced personal danger. Perhaps it was denial, or perhaps I had learned from experiences that dread may overstate the truth. On that first morning, as I was still driving up to the school, I saw some men leaning against the gas station on the corner, staring at passing automobiles for a bit too long. Nevertheless, I parked, inhaled deeply, and tried to tell myself, just class, get in, get out. The campus inside has the allure of an old public university. Dusty windows, creaky floors, and fluorescent lights above that hummed faintly. On the second floor, I discovered my first classroom. It was an ordinary building with a subtle smell of old carpet and bleach. I discovered I didn't know anyone when I walked in. The majority of the pupils were young, no older than 19 or 20. I experienced every year of my age bearing down on me like a burden. In an attempt to blend in, I chose a seat in the back corner near a window where the light fell just right. I had clammy hands. I practiced several small chat lines in my mind and noticed that my bag seemed heavier than usual. I might have a seat next to someone. Perhaps not. Simply take a breath. After a few minutes, I heard a chair next to mine scrape. She had greasy brown hair wrapped in a loose knot, a slight odor of smoking that clung to her, and she was extremely emaciated. She seemed somewhat haunted by her sunken eyes. Yet she smiled at me and appeared to be attempting to re-establish herself normally. "Do you mind if I sit here?" Although she spoke softly, she had a roughness to her voice, as if she had smoked many cigarettes over the years. I whispered, "Yeah, sure," a little surprised. She brushed invisible lint from her shirt and snuggled in. An uneasy pause ensued. She then inclined slightly in my direction. "You've got the nicest blouse in this room," she remarked, nearly gasping for air. I chose this seat for that reason. I blinked. "Oh, thanks," I said, not sure how to react. That kind of compliment from a complete stranger always carries a burden, an expectation. But I was too clumsy to think too much about it. Harper was her name. Harper had no notepad, no backpack, and no books. "Nothing. My financial aid hasn't come through," she replied hastily, as if she could sense the disapproval in my eyes. "I'd prefer not to fall behind. However, is it possible for me to borrow your book, and perhaps a pen?" After a brief moment of hesitation, I gave her my pen and textbook. "Thank you. You're really saving my life." I tried to concentrate on the lecture as class started, but Harper kept looking at my book and occasionally making notes. She was strangely persistent yet not disturbing. In her focus, she looked to me with a hopeful expression after class. "Hey, how about we take a stroll to the library? I just have a few chapters to scan." I paused. Soon, I had another class, but I said, "Yeah, sure," because of something in her voice, the tense edge, the almost imploring sound. "You and I can go for a walk." We started down the corridor after leaving the classroom. She stopped suddenly halfway there and took out a broken phone. "Shit," she softly said. "I just got an SMS from my son. Right now. He needs me home. Do you have a child?" Sincerely astonished, I asked. "Yeah," she responded in a strained voice. 14. "I can't go alone, but I'm always in some sort of mess. Would you be able to accompany me?" I went cold. That's not a smart plan, in my opinion. I noticed a flash of dread on her face as her eyes expanded. "I can't manage this alone, please. Only for a couple of minutes," I said, instinctively backing off. "I really can't." Like a marionette with its strings sliced, she collapsed and fell to the ground. Her tears quickly turned into a wail as they streamed down her cheeks. "You're not understanding. You're no different from anybody else. Do you believe I can manage this alone?" I was stuck and didn't know what to do. Seeing someone so distraught made my stomach turn, even if my instincts told me to get out. With my phone out, I called a friend in a whisper, so that someone would know where I was. I walked slowly over to the library's doors. Harper remained behind, her yelling becoming hushed. A grey vehicle arrived a few minutes later. A man's voice cut through the tension, angry and harsh. They quarreled. The tone shivered me even though I couldn't hear the words from where I stood. After Harper got into the car and slammed the door, they took off. With my mind racing and my body still stiff, I watched until the automobile vanished. I hated going to class the following day. Harper never returned, even though I thought she would be there, ready to vent her frustration or bewilderment at me. Nor in that month, nor in that week. I casually asked around. She was unknown. The roster did not include her. She was non-existent, and I was plagued by that concept, the what-if scenario. After a few weeks, I became comfortable in my classes. However, each time I passed that quad and looked at the parking lot, I recalled how she had cried. How, in a few seconds, Her eyes had changed from delicate to panicked to nearly aggressive. Later, I discovered that outsiders occasionally push boundaries, take advantage of goodwill, or even fabricate illusions in order to control someone in communities similar to ours. I had no desire to discover Harper's true motivations. Perhaps that is the lesson. Knowing when to say no, even when your intuition tells you otherwise, is sometimes necessary for life. She was never seen by me again. But for years, every time I sat down next to a stranger or passed through crowded areas, I thought of her eyes, the desperation, the uncertainty, and how a small kindness could have escalated into something much more. I also came to the realization that college is more than simply lectures and classes. It's about the folks you meet and the ones that disappear sometimes. It seems like yesterday when I think back on my freshman year's fall. I had never lived away from home before, and that was in 2019. In Ohio, I attended a tiny private university. There are roughly 3,500 students enrolled at Hartwell University. The majority of the nearby buildings were as ancient as the school itself, and the campus was nestled into this historic town. Walking around at night gave you a sense of the place's history, as some of the dorms had been constructed in 1950 seconds and had not been modified much since. Crofton Hall, located on the north end of campus, was where I resided in a double dorm room. Marcus Flynn was a man who shared my room. I initially believed that we would get along well, but I quickly discovered that Marcus had a tendency toward hostility. He was the kind of person who would go out of his way to irritate me. But he wasn't bad. He would bang on my desk while I was studying, play loud music despite my requests that he stop, and occasionally he would conceal my belongings for amusement. He would constantly smile and say, "Bro, chill," as I looked for my notebook or my phone charger. It was oppressive living with him at that small dorm room. As a result, I formed a habit really rapidly. Outside of our room, I would study as much as I could. Fortunately, there were lots of study spots on campus. The library, of course, but also other buildings with chairs beside large windows and peaceful nooks. In fact, I started to like those evenings when I would carry my backpack across campus, pick a location, and then blend into my work. It was commonplace by October. Dinners, late-night study sessions, and classes. Early in the year, the temperature dropped, and I recall seeing leaves fall across the brick walkways as I made my way to the building of my choice for the night. One Thursday night, following dinner with Claire, a friend, I returned to Drayton Hall, a school that most students stayed away from at night. It included 4 stories, vast corridors, and classrooms for everything, from math laboratories to English lectures. By evening, the top 2 stories were typically empty. For me, that was ideal. I discovered a study chair by the window on the 3rd level, one of those with a small desk affixed to the side. It looked out over the quad, which was illuminated by the faint yellow lamp strewn around the walkways. I laid down my water bottle, notepad, and laptop, and I lost myself in my duties for the next few hours. I eventually leaned back, removed my earbuds, and stretched at around 9 o'clock. I heard it at that point. Steps. They came from behind me, down the hall, and at first they were faint. It has a straightforward layout. One path led to a section of classrooms, while the other to the stairway. The classroom side was where the steps were coming from. For a moment, I stood motionless. I thought it was simply another student, but the footsteps looked odd the closer they came. They didn't pass me by. Rather, they reduced their speed. Whoever it was seemed to have halted completely out of my line of sight. I yelled out, "Hello," my voice resonating softly down the deserted corridor. No answer. I hurriedly began packing, stuffing my laptop into my bag. Something caught my attention out of the corner of my eye, and it made my stomach turn. The outline of a figure slipping behind the hallway was divided by one of the broad concrete beams. All I saw was the tall, slender figure scuttling out of view. After a moment of standing there with my heart pounding, I made myself move in the direction of the stairwell. I looked back and saw that the hallway was deserted. I made the decision to change things up the very next evening. I didn't want to return to Drayton Hall, but I also didn't want to acknowledge that I had been terrified out. I went to the Performing Arts Centre instead. There were fewer classrooms in that building, and it was calmer. The halls were essentially deserted except for rehearsals and concerts. I took a seat at a little table nestled between two passageways on the first floor, next to a side stairway. Hours passed in silence. Just a few pupils went past. By 1000 p.m. it was quiet there. The paper scraped under my pen. As I put my water bottle down, it clicked hollowly. Then there were footsteps once more. I could clearly hear them this time, because I wasn't using earplugs. They came steadily from the hallway that led to the area where I spent Saturday, but they halted just in front of the bend. My gaze was fixed on the wall. Whoever it was, they were hardly visible. I should have heard them if they moved ahead or backward, but there was only stillness. "What the hell are you doing?" I said to myself. I moved my chair back and gathered my belongings. In the deserted building, the scrape reverberated excessively loudly. I turned around since I didn't want to pass that passageway. The footsteps resumed as soon as I did. Then they accelerated. I quickly whirled around in an attempt to apprehend the person. I briefly caught sight of him, a tall, slender man moving swiftly toward me. I saw enough of his face, albeit it was blurry in the low light. He walked with long arms that swung stiffly and short, dark hair. My stomach railed. I pushed the crash bar and slipped out into the chilly night air after making a fast turn into a side exit that I happened to pass. I was not followed out by the dude. I hurried across campus, looking over every corner, until I came to Crofton Hall. I stopped studying late at night in remote buildings after that. Even though I didn't enjoy staying in the room with Marcus, it was safer than wandering about campus with a strange person who might be pursuing me. However, something that occurred 3 days later rocked me more than any of those evenings. After class, I returned to the dorm and discovered Marcus scrolling through his phone while seated on his bed. "Yo," he murmured, raising his head. "Some dude was here asking for you earlier." I went cold. "What guy?" Marcus gave a shrug. "Slim, tall man. Looked, I'm not sure. A little jittery. He asked if you were there when he knocked." "No," I told him. "He simply left after that." I felt sick to my stomach. Did he express his desires? Not at all. "I only asked for you." No name was left. Did not add anything. With a rushing mind, I sat down carefully. Marcus scowled. "Are you okay, man? You appear pallid." After a moment of hesitation, I told him everything. I could hear the man slipping behind the beam, following me. At the performing arts facility that evening. In fact, Marcus placed his phone down. "Why didn't you tell me earlier, dude? That is really eerie." I wondered if I was dreaming. "Well, since he arrived here, you're not." I didn't see the man again for the remainder of that semester. I altered my schedule, stayed in busy areas, and even put up with Marcus's pranks to prolong his stay in the dorm. But occasionally, when I was strolling across campus at night, I would get the same sense that someone was standing a few paces behind me, watching, waiting, and I will always remember that whoever he was knew my name, where I lived, and, for a while, was always within touching distance. I never imagined that something as commonplace as walking to class would leave me with enduring memories. I was 19 years old, and in my second year at Redwood College, a mid-sized institution nestled in a sleepy northern Pennsylvanian town. I didn't live on campus like a lot of my peers. I acquired a cheap studio apartment above a laundromat about half a mile from college because my parents' financial circumstances had made living in a dorm unfeasible. I usually took the same route to college in the mornings, down Burwood Avenue, past the diner on the corner where the aroma of frying bacon wafted into the cold air, then across the main road until I reached the East Quad. The walk wasn't too difficult, and in the fall, the cool air could wake me up without the need for coffee. I could even see gorgeous orange and gold leaves crunching beneath my shoes. It wasn't any different that morning, or at least it shouldn't have been. I recall half chuckling at some stupid meme that my pals from back home sent me while I was using my phone to browse through our group chat. Only the slight buzz of traffic from the freeway, a few streets away, could be heard on the calm road ahead. At that moment, I looked up and saw a man approaching me on an ancient bicycle. Bike riders usually coasted by fast. I would simply step aside, give a nod, and be done. This man, however, slowed. Then he broke. His old tire's screech broke the stillness, and I felt sick to my stomach. At least not from my college. He wasn't a student. He appeared to be wiry and pallid, in his late 60s or early 70s, under a ragged baseball cap. His wiry grey hair protruded from his deeply wrinkled face. I was particularly uneasy about his huge, unblinking eyes, focused on me. Confused, I stopped moving. "Don't worry," he murmured as he shakily got off his bike. He spoke in a hoarse, strangely purposeful voice. "I'm not going to hurt you." I went cold. The fact that he said those words first made every nerve in my body tingle. My heart began to beat, hammering. I mumbled, "Oh, okay," and forced a tense laugh. The words stopped in my throat as I tried to say that I should keep going since I was late for class. He took a step forward, pushing his bike with him. His words, "You shouldn't be walking on the grass," came out of nowhere. I looked down. I became aware that my foot had strayed a little from the pavement and onto the grassy area at the curb. It wasn't a lot. I returned to the pavement slowly, as if reprimanding a youngster. He added, "You wouldn't want to step on any bugs or get your shoes dirty." His delivery of it made me shiver for some reason. "Right," I muttered. My backpack was moved to my shoulders. "Well, I should probably watch your name." He cut me off. He still had that uncomfortable smile on his face, but his tone was firm and authoritative. I paused, but I whispered so as not to make things worse. "Nathan is here." His face remained unchanged. He merely gave a nod. "Nathan, don't be concerned. I won't do you any harm." I felt my stomach turn at the words. He had done them just the same way. "That's good," I murmured, trying to make myself laugh politely. He said again, "Listen, get off the grass. I'm running late." I went cold. I quickly looked down, but I was completely on the sidewalk. Not this time, even near the grass. My mouth became parched. "What?" I muttered. "You don't want to get your shoes soiled or walk on any pests." "Word for word," he repeated. He spoke in the same tone. I felt a surge of coldness. Not only did it feel familiar, but it also felt off. My brain raced for a rational explanation. He might have been senile. I might have misheard. Perhaps. "What's your name?" He tilted his head and asked again. "I told you so," but he interrupted me before I could say anything more. "I have grandchildren in the future. They require gas money." It was quite abrupt how the conversation changed. I stammered out what I said. "No money is in my possession. Apologies. Do you?" His voice was flat as he demanded, "Look in your pockets." My heart began to race. "I don't have any spare change." "I apologize. I had to leave immediately." "Check your pockets," he said again, more loudly. His huge eyes were fixed on mine, and his face was expressionless. I took a step back and gave a short shake of my head. "I am unable to assist you." We merely stared at one another for a while. On his bike's grip, his knuckles were white. Then he gave one nod, like though a switch had been flipped. "Okay, then. Nathan, don't be concerned. I won't do you any harm." I was unable to move quickly enough. I didn't turn around and hurried along the sidewalk. Maybe 30 seconds later, when I did, he was gone. He seemed to have disappeared into thin air because the street was deserted. I told myself it was just some strange old man and tried to brush it off. However, my stomach fell once more when I arrived at the intersection by campus. In the center of the road was a truck that lay on its side. It was surrounded by an ambulance and police cars, flashing lights. The frame of twisted metal gleamed in the Sunday morning light. They were pulling out a stretcher. I came to a complete halt. My throat tightened each breath. I thought about what he had said. "Leave the grass alone. You don't want to get your shoes soiled or walk on any pests." Why had he made such a repetition of himself? Why did I feel as though I had entered a broken reality loop? And why did I secretly think that I might have been that truck if I hadn't left when I did? That day still bothers me. I'm not sure if he was a bewildered elderly man or something else. However, each time I pass by I can just hear his rasping voice in my ear again at that intersection. I won't harm you, so don't worry. The year I left home for college, I was 18. In the little Midwestern town where I grew up, everyone knew one another. Moving into Westbrook University's dorms was therefore like traveling to a different planet. It was a living space. Students were stretched out on the lawn, 24/7, the sound of guitars floating through the open windows. Every hallway was filled with the stench of fried pizza boxes. Prior to moving in, I made a self-promise to be gregarious. I wasn't exactly a recluse back home, but I did prefer to stick with a select group of pals. But my reset button was meant to be college. For a while, all went just as planned. I wanted to meet people, join groups, and possibly even find a girlfriend. I attended events on college, moved between a few different friend groups, and even began dating Rachel, who resided in the dorm opposite from mine. Everything felt well balanced. I attended class. I spent time with others. I was getting used. I met Aaron at that point. It was late in the morning on a Tuesday. Sociology intro had just ended. A girl I had spotted sitting a few seats ahead of me turned around as I was shoving my notepad back into my bag. She wore a cardigan, in spite of the 90 heat, had her long auburn hair pulled up in a tidy ponytail, and wore large glasses that made her eyes appear a bit too large for her face. "Hey," she remarked, fiddling with her backpack strap. "You will want to grab lunch." I paused, because she looked so eager that I just nodded, even though normally I'd accompany anybody from class was walking that way. Yes, of course. To get to the dining hall, we crossed campus on foot. As usual, the line was lengthy, but she continued the light conversation. She inquired, "So, what's your major?" "Communications." "Truthfully, I'm still finding out what I want to do." She grinned. "That's awesome. I study English literature. I don't care that people say it's pointless." We picked a place at the window that looked out over the quad, and I laughed courteously. Initially, it was just the typical classroom conversation. However, she was waiting once more after class concluded the following day. Lunch. The following day, and the day after that, she inquired again with the same optimistic smile. It started to happen frequently. At first, I didn't mind. Aaron seemed a touch intense, but he wasn't unpleasant to be around. However, I quickly came to the realization that I was losing out on socializing by usually dining with her. If a fellow student, Aaron was already there waiting for me to go with her when she requested me to join them. Saying no felt weird. Rachel even made one inquiry. "Hey, how come you never eat with us anymore?" I scratched the back of my neck and remarked, "I just kind of got stuck in a routine." She gave me a glance that was difficult to read. Other than lunch, Aaron and I weren't close. She began texting me online, but we didn't spend weekends or evenings together. Facebook was just starting to gain traction on campus at the time. She also unexpectedly sent me a friend request one day. I never gave her my last name, which is strange. I gazed at the notification that night. Erin Keller, friend request. How on earth did she discover me? We had no pals in common. All I could think of was that she had tracked me down by browsing the university's student network page. However, I reasoned, what could possibly go wrong? I selected accept. That was the beginning. She sent me lengthy paragraphs analyzing everything I wrote, rather than just saying hi or what's up. If I wrote anything stupid about the rubbery taste of the cafeteria chicken, she would respond, "LOL, I had the same thought. Perhaps we ought to launch a petition." "This is so you," would be her remark if I shared a song lyric. I initially assumed it was just her social awkwardness, but then I observed something else. My girlfriend's name is Rachel. Erin made no secret of her distaste for Rachel. She would joke that she didn't fit the name Rachel, or what if she tried using her middle name instead. She would chuckle while she typed, but it was clear that she wasn't being serious. She sent me a message one evening. "Don't you think it's a little confusing? Aaron, even if I'm in your life, you're dating Rachel. For example, I think one of us ought to change our name." Funny, all I did was look at the screen. Me though, yes. It doesn't operate that way. I'm kidding, Aaron, relax. I knew she wasn't, though. The most peculiar incident occurred immediately following our final freshman class. Want to go out to lunch instead of her usual? Aaron inquired. Do you want to take a walk with me? Yes, of course. Where? You'll see. I had no idea how to refuse. She guided me through the back parking lot, past the library, and into the forested area that surrounded the campus's perimeter. As we moved farther, the sounds of other students diminished until only the crunching of leaves and birds could be heard. At last, she took a seat on a log and patted the area next to her. I sat nervously. Her eyes were watering as she gazed at me. I'm really going to miss you this summer. I made an effort to grin. Without classes, yes, things will be different. I think, she paused. We've got something unique, aren't you? Aaron She then gave me a kiss. I immediately retreated. Whoa, I have a girlfriend. Hello. I stood as her face crumbled. I should leave. I have plans. I left those woods almost jogging. My life had changed drastically by the time I started my second year. At the beginning of the semester, Rachel and I had broken up, and I had moved out of campus and into a house with some friends. Along with the ongoing drama in the house, it was untidy. I was exhausted. I think that's why I allowed Aaron to re-enter my life. Never alone, never too close. However, I occasionally responded to her messages. After that, I began dating a new man named Kyle. Aaron detested it as well. I was active on Tumblr at the time, sharing music, reblogs, and silly ideas, nothing serious. I received a direct message from a random blog I followed one afternoon. I received a screenshot from them. They were asked to evaluate the segments of my biography, as I was a fictional figure. Although the response was unclear, the username that posed the query drew my attention. When I clicked, my stomach fell. Erin was the one. Her blog was filled with quotes, and was pink and flowery, resembling a shrine. However, nearly every post featured me lunches we'd had, things I'd said in class, lyrics to songs I'd shared, and old tales I could hardly recall sharing. She portrayed the kiss in the woods as mutually beneficial in her writing. She wrote about Rachel as if she were a villain or a barrier, as if he were robbing me. She wrote of Kyle. She even made up a fictional best buddy named Josh, who was obviously based on me, and who was supposed to look out for her and share things with her. In her fantasy, I was divided into two parts, her ideal buddy and her soulmate. She received supportive comments from others who agreed with her. I was ill. I sent her a message that evening. I came across your blog. Aaron, what the devil? She did not respond. As though I were your property. You have been writing about me. Remove it. Quiet. I was unable to locate the blog the following day, since it had either disappeared or been renamed. She pretended nothing had happened when I saw her in class. Things just grew darker after that. She made an attempt to flirt with Kyle. She made advances on 3 of my friends after that failed. She eventually dated a former roommate of mine, but she continued to write me saying things like, I wish it was you instead. She started whispers and rumors when I tried to back off, costing me a chance at an internship I had spent months securing. I understood that letting her believe she was a part of my life was safer than running the risk of upsetting her. I thought maybe it was over after graduation. These days, I hardly ever use social media. However, she unexpectedly messaged me one evening. May I ask you a private question? She continued, but I didn't respond. Inquiries concerning my sexual orientation, my preferences, and my dislikes. I answered briefly and ambiguously in the hopes that she would drop it. What if I were a boy? She wrote after that. Would everything be different? Stop, I said. She didn't. She sent pictures of herself. Rapid-fire communications followed, 5 or 6 at a time, repeating verbatim what I had told her about myself, as if she were attempting to emulate me. I blocked her everywhere. I hadn't heard anything for years until I checked Facebook this week. Once more, there it was. Aaron Keller's friend request is still pending my response. Keller's friend request is still pending my response. I never imagined that a simple weekend trip to another college would have such a lasting impression on me. I was starting to feel a little worn out at my own school by the fall of my junior year. I attended Riverbend College, a smaller private institution homewood in upstate Pennsylvania's woodlands. It was safe, comfortable, and quiet, yet sometimes it seemed oppressive. The social scene was limited and everyone knew everyone. For this reason, I occasionally traveled for an hour to Worcester University, a considerably larger institution where some of my best friends from high school had graduated. Eli and Marcus had both visited that there. I drove out to visit them anytime I needed a respite from my peaceful little school, because they were just an hour down the highway. You could sense the vitality of Penchester when you were strolling along the streets at night. The sound of music leaking from house parties, the crowds of people leaving restaurants, and the packed bars where no one was paying close attention to ID checks. It was more like a city inside a school than Riverbend. I made the decision to go down to my classes concluded on a Friday night in October of that year. I put a backpack in my car's trunk, turned on a podcast for the ride, and got there just after 8 o'clock. The small off-campus apartment where Eli and Marcus lived had a slight pizza and beer can odor. Marcus gave me a back pat. The moment I walked in, he said, "Finally, you made it," he reported with a smile. "Dude, we have a great evening planned." Eli grinned as he sat cross-legged on the couch and had a beer already. He seemed worn out. "Man, are you sure you can hang out with people from Worcester?" I dropped my stuff by the couch and said, "Please, this has been something I've been anticipating all week." The plan was straightforward. Spend some time together, then proceed to a few bars close to school. We would attend the football game, for which Penchester was renowned, tomorrow. However, the three of us had planned to visit the downtown strip that Friday night with a few of their college pals. We departed the apartment at around 10 o'clock. The leaves crunched beneath our feet, and the air was cool in October. We decided not to drive, as Marcus claimed it would only take 10 minutes to walk. But halfway there, Eli stopped talking. He pointed out in the direction of a dorm building and said, "Yo, I'll meet you guys at the bar. I had to make a brief stop at Trevor's. It won't take long." "All right," said Marcus. "We'll see you there." Only the two of us were left to traverse the university. Penchester was enormous, much larger than Riverbend. The sidewalks appeared to go on indefinitely. All around us, buildings rise like towers. This area of campus seemed quiet, despite the fact that it was a Friday night. The majority of the sounds originated in the distance. From the student center, there are shouting and laughter. There's a bass banging from an off-campus party. A courtyard between two tall classroom buildings was traversed by us. The lighting was low. Patches of crumbling pavement are illuminated by a few flickering lampposts. I sensed it at that moment, the unexpected need to go to the restroom. I grimaced and slowed. "I really need to urinate." Marcus had already chuckled. "It's been about 5 minutes since we started walking," I said, looking at the closest building. "I'm serious. There were the tall glass doors. Do you think I can use one in there and duck in?" He gave a shrug. "Worth a try." To my astonishment, the door opened when I tried it. "It's unlocked." Marcus responded, "You're lucky," and took out his phone. "I received a call just now. Proceed." "Here. I'll wait. But don't lose yourself in there. This area resembles a maze." Rolling my eyes, I went inside. When no one was present, the stagnant air that permeates old academic buildings assaulted you. Fluorescent lights overhead hummed softly. I ended up standing in a lounge area with shabby armchairs and fryer-covered bulletin boards. There's no restroom in sight. I went down one corridor, then another. I went around every corner. I thought there would be a restroom door, but there wasn't. Every hallway had the same appearance. White walls, tiny windows, shut classroom doors, and gently buzzing, dim ceiling lights. What on earth is a bathroom? I whispered to myself. I wandered about for a few minutes before finding one at the end of a hallway. With the intention of going back, I entered, relieved myself, cleaned my hands, and then exited. But I was unable to. Each hallway had the same appearance. The turns I believed I remembered no longer seemed correct. I confidently took one step, only to discover that it took me in a different direction than I had anticipated. I heard it at that point. Steps. I initially thought it might have been another student or a janitor, but something about them made me uneasy. They moved quickly and deliberately. I froze, ducked back around the corner as it got closer. My heart began to pound. Getting caught may lead to consequences if I wasn't even supposed to be in here. The footsteps came around the bend. I made the snap decision to slip up a stairway directly behind me. The first and second floors have almost the same appearance. Identical sterile corridors, identical same flashing lights, locked classroom doors. I made my way down one hallway, attempting to remain composed. Then it came to me once more. The footsteps are coming more quickly now that they are on the stairs. A knot of coldness grew in my stomach. They were after me, whoever this was. With my sneakers squeaking on the tile floor, I accelerated my speed. With my breath getting louder, I turned left and then right. I heard footsteps echoing behind me. They mirrored every move I made. All right, I thought to myself, perhaps it's just a coincidence. Perhaps they are moving in the same direction. However, I had a gut feeling that I was being pursued. I attempted a locked classroom door. One more locked. I could feel my heart pounding in my ears, and my palms were perspiring. Then I noticed a lift at the hallway's end. I slammed the button as I ran toward it. The doors miraculously opened at once. I ducked inside and repeatedly punched the first floor button, pressing it with a desperate finger.